Welcome back to another Dive in 5. My name is Rebecca Ore and I'm the Math DRT.
I'm Bailey Murphy, Math DRT.
And today we're going to be talking about first grade time. So before we dive in, we want you to pause this video, take a look at the tasks below, complete them on your own or with a partner, and then think to yourself, how are these two tasks similar and how are they different?
Welcome back. So let's talk about the progression with BEST. You'll see that there is no kindergarten benchmarks listed on this because this is the first time students are going to be introduced to time. So in first grade, students are going to partition circles and rectangles into two equal sized parts and name them as halves. They're also going to be using analog and digital clocks to tell and write time in hours and half hours.
So once you lay the foundation, in second grade, they'll be able to tell time to the nearest 5 minutes, and then they'll also be able to tell time to the nearest minute and solve elapsed time problems once they get to third grade. So in first grade, students are formally introduced to clocks and telling time. They begin to understand that the shorter hand points to the hour and the longer hand points to the minutes. They also explore that there are 60 minutes in the hour.
Right, and so on the screen I see that you have a Judy clock or an analog clock, and these are great to use because students can physically move the minute hand to see how the hour hand changes as that minute hand moves.
That's right. Another great thing about this is that they can see every single little minute tick mark on the clock all the way around, which can relate to something like this, the clock and the number line. Notice that the first number line has every single hour, and then the second number line, it's really hard to see, but there's tiny little minutes all the way 0 through 60. So this is a great tool to get students to relate a number line to a clock, something that they know to something that they're learning. So check out this video of how you can move a number line to create a clock.
After students have practiced reading the time, we then come to the realization that this is in fact a clock, and we circle it into the clock so that students can continue practicing reading the double number line just like we were doing when it was laid out flat, only in a clock. So now, what does this read?
Hour.
The hours. And what does this one read?
Minute.
Minutes. And how many minutes are on the clock altogether?
60.
Very good.
So there's an example. You really want to think about building students' foundational knowledge of the hour hand, the minute hand, how many minutes, constantly asking them those questions to get them familiar with the clock. So Bailey, we have a number of clocks here, and they all tell time to the hour. What do you notice about the hour hand and the minute hand in all these clocks?
So I noticed that a couple of things. I noticed that the hour hand is shorter and the minute hand is longer. I also noticed that the minute hand is pointing directly to the 12 on all the clocks, but the hour hand is pointing directly to other numbers on the clock.
Exactly. So now take a look. All the clocks have the time. The first clock is 2 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Based on what you just said and what you see here, what time do you think it is on the Judy clock?
So the minute hand is pointing towards the 12, the hour hand is pointing towards 3, so it's 3 o'clock.
Awesome. And cut. So that's basically the kinds of conversations that you can have with your students so that we're not only telling them this is that, but that they're experimenting and they're exploring, well, I noticed that all of these are the same. So when the minute hand points to the 12, that must mean that it's o'clock. Now, another way that we can support students is by giving them a clock that only has the hour hand, because sometimes the hour hand is not always going to point directly to the hour. So we want to make sure that we move it in between the hours and give some prompts such as these on the right. When the hour hand is in between 4 and 5, it's after 4 and before 5. This is really important because students are also going to be telling time to the half hour.
Let's take a look at the task that you did at the beginning. You were asked to circle the examples of halves, which you should have circled the ones that have 2 equal sides, and you were also asked to shade that clock to show half past the hour. This is a great opportunity to make connections between what students have already learned about fractions and what they're going to learn about time.
And to go along with that, we can show them back to that number line, the double number line in the clock, and have them also draw a line to cut that directly in half. Then once you do that, you can start shading halves and have conversations about, well, which clock shows half past the time and which clock shows half until the next hour. Let students explore and come up with these kind of definitions on their own to make sense of it on their own.
So when we think about misconceptions with time, students may confuse the minute hand with the hour hand or the hour hand with the minute hand. So if you see this, you can take them back to a one-handed clock to focus on telling time to the hour and the half hour.
Another misconception that students might have is that they may read this clock as an example of 6 minutes past 3 hours or 3 hours and 6 minutes. They get confused with the hour hand and the minute hand and thinking that the number on the clock represents the number of minutes. To support this, we want to guide students to notice the individual tick marks on the clock and how they represent 1 minute each. So if they count each of those all the way till they get to 6, they will actually have counted 30 minutes. Going back to that double number line or a clock similar to this one will support students in remembering the minutes on the clock. And to wrap up today's Dive in 5, we want you to remember to go in between the concrete, representational, and abstract thinking little islands. You might have to go back and forth, but we really do want to build students' understanding by starting with that concrete model and moving them to reading time to the hour and the half hour. And that's all for this Dive in 5. We'll see you on the next one.